This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides, so head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and often somebody who joins me is Josie Lewis, our head gardener, and indeed she is this morning. And the reason that we've chosen the subject today is just noticing this summer where the weather has been so bizarre. Obviously, we all remember the extreme heat wave that we had in May and then the deluging rain that we had at the end of May and beginning of June. And just the sort of climate change things that seem to be not all about drought or all about wet, but mixing and going from one day to another the other day. Just this, Josie, good morning.
Hello, hi.
So I remember you saying to me that it had gone to 50 degrees in the tunnel one day, but the day before it had been 5 or 10 or something.
That's right, yeah, because we had that frost in late May, didn't we? Luckily, we were behind planting the dahlias, so they hadn't gone out, which was a godsend in the end. But yeah, the fluctuation for the plants that are in the polytunnels, because we haven't got vented sides on the polytunnels on two of them. So it does get up to 50 degrees and then overnight down to 5. But it's just a huge ask for any plant. Yeah, and for the poor gardeners who have to go in there at 50 degrees and try and rescue the plants.
Yeah. So I thought what we would try and do between us is to kind of highlight the things that have loved and thrived in the swivelling climate that we're having. So sort of versatility, I suppose. The things that have really hated it that we're beginning to seriously consider whether we would be growing them in 5 to 10 years. And so sort of the conclusions of maybe 5 plants at the end that we're going to put more in of because they just do have this sort of versatility. So those are the sort of themes that I'd love to sort of draw out as we chat through over the next half an hour. And so the thing that made me start to think about this as a subject was walking down into the wood here in the middle of April to the bluebells. And the bluebells and wild garlic in the wood here have been, since we moved here 33 years ago, just absolutely incredible. But I'm afraid that there just is no doubt that the wild garlic is getting the upper hand now and the bluebells are less and less good. And to be honest, what tends to happen now is that they go over so quickly. So they come up, and whereas we used to be able to go down and picnic in the bluebell wood for a good 3 weeks with that amazing perfume, really honestly now you would have to half that. I would say it's 10 days before they start to go over and kind of die back. Whereas I was in Scotland in May, for quite a lot of May, on a writing break, and the bluebells were absolutely incredible the day I got off the train in Fort William, carpeting the hillsides so that literally the hillsides had a sort of blue haze over them. And they still looked like that as I left 3 weeks later, totally pristine. And I guess that's not surprising because it's wetter and there is higher humidity in the atmosphere. So bluebells is something that has really drawn my attention of the difference very, very strikingly now between the south and the north of England.
Yeah, they like that. They all grow along the Atlantic seaboard, don't they? So
yeah,
as we get more Mediterranean, they're trying to go further and further north, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So, Josie, why don't you kick off with the things that you've noticed in our garden that have really loved the drought, but also can put up with the torrential rain and, I'm afraid, the howling gales that seem to be part of climate change here?
Yes, an eryngium is something that will withstand anything, really. They don't mind the cold. They don't seem to mind the wet. And, of course, they love the dry as well. Because we garden on such heavy clay, it's really difficult to find suitable homes for everything, isn't it? So I think for us, if you look for tap-rooted plants, they do particularly well.
That's a very good point,
like Miss Wilmot's ghost, she'll grow anywhere, really. And will put up with the winter wet because, as they overwinter their first year. I mean, that would be, one thing that
your first group.
Yeah, because you get so many varieties. You can get the blues and the silvers. So they're, that in a way, that's another thing that we're looking for. For the warmer summers, you want to be looking for silver foliage plants, like stachys is one that everyone knows. What's it called? Lamb's ears or, the furry things.
Yeah.
Because if they've got that hairy foliage and they're silver, then that helps reduce evaporation so much. So they can put up with the heat a lot better.
Yeah. Gosh, do you know, it's making me think and realise. So I went to Dorset last weekend and I went for a couple of walks with the dogs on the beach. And I'm just thinking there was sea hollies.
Yeah.
Absolutely thriving, of course. There was also sea kale. There was the horned poppy, the glaucum flavum.
Yeah.
And all those things, that's so right, isn't it? That they're incredibly hardy, resistant plants because of the sea spray. And, one moment it might be a storm and so they get an absolute drenching from the sea and also possibly the sky, but also it's very exposed. So thinking of any seaside plant would be a good idea for this versatility aspect. I mean, that's just such a good point. So eryngiums and stachys definitely on our list.
Yes, yeah.
I would add the Mediterranean ones.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Well, they work so long as your ground is free draining because you've got the really wet winters. So they're great for the heat waves. But, if you're like us on clay, lavender really struggles. So we have to put our lavenders into really dry beds or against the house. But rosemary is a good Mediterranean, isn't it? That'll put up with most things, really.
It does seem to, doesn't it? And I mean, it does need drainage. And what I find is here, if we don't have drainage added to where we plant them, they tend to get that thing where a whole bough dies off.
Yes.
Whereas in the Dutch yard, where I know lots of grit has gone in, they're thriving. We've got the lovely one called rosemary prostratus, which isn't totally cascading. So it sort of mounds up, but then the branches sort of cascade down. So it isn't just purely flat. Anyway, I love it. And it's such a good edging plant. I mean, I would say that would be one of my desert island plants, rosemary prostratus. So I'm going to add that. I'll do a resume of our top picks at the end, but that would definitely be my number 3. And bearded iris, do you feel the same as lavender, that they do need such a good baking? They really don't thrive in the torrential rain.
No, they don't like it, but they're in the driest area in this garden, aren't they? Because they got special loving care by Joe, our iris expert. So he'll keep them going whatever happens. But they do need that. They're at the base of a south-facing wall, and that's what they really need, with their rhizomes exposed to get that good baking. Otherwise, they just won't put up with it. They just look miserable, don't they?
Yeah, and they don't flower very well if in that situation.
No, that's right. I mean, did you notice them particularly amazing this year? I'm not sure that I did.
Well, I was away for quite a lot of May, Josie, so I'm not a fair judge.
I didn't think they flowered as well this year as in last year, but we had such a wet winter, and I don't know if that affects them.
Yeah. And what about teucriums, which I really like, the dark blue flowered teucrium? And do you think that's as sort of tough as rosemary or less so?
It seems to be in this garden, doesn't it? It never changes. That's a really good plant. If you want to, we've got I can't remember what variety we've got, but the low growing. It's great for edging the borders and
fruticosum. I think it is,
yes,
but I could be wrong. Yeah,
it looks great, doesn't it? It's just been in the farmhouse for years, and it's always fantastic.
Yeah, it is. And do you know, funnily enough, my parents used to grow that in huge terracotta pots. They have a sort of gravel garden and they had these terracotta pots. And so I remember seeing that 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think they'd brought it back from a trip to Rhodes when they used to bring back a lot of plants with plant import licenses. And, we've still got the cuttings from the original plants. So I really rate teucriums. I think they're a really good plant. And oddly, I think not quite enough, as widely grown as rosemary. So I think they're really worth looking into.
I was going to say it's an unusual plant to most people, not to most people, but to a lot of people. It's not well known at all, but really worth searching out.
Yeah. And I have to say, I think the euphorbias seem to be pretty hardy, pretty flexible, able to cope with different sites and situations. Would you agree with euphorbias, Josie?
Yeah, definitely. But to be fair, there's a euphorbia for every situation, isn't there?
Yeah.
Things that look like cacti usually turn out to be euphorbias if you can't identify them. The really fleshy ones.
Myrsinites, yeah.
But the ones we grow here, Wolfenii, seem to put up with a lot, don't they?
They really do. They really do. I mean, there's one word of warning, which I just have to add in with euphorbias, of course, is about the sap. So it was pouring with rain here yesterday, and we had started to deadhead the Euphorbia wolfenii. We grow one called John Tomlinson, which honestly has looked superb here since February. Very long flowering perennial, such a good value plant. And I'd deadheaded some because I had a photo shoot with Jonathan very, very carefully, wearing my glasses quite carefully and always wearing gloves and always cutting the stems and putting them in the same direction into the barrow. So the heads are one end and the stems are the other. Because otherwise what I find is if you just chuck them in, literally as you take them out of the barrow, you have to be so careful not to get the sap on your hands or on your gloves, and then to sort of push your fringe back if you're me and actually get them in your eye. But anyway, I noticed yesterday, Rebecca, the deputy head gardener, was doing the euphorbias, and I was thinking, poor her, what a horrible thing to do in the rain. And then I thought, oh no, that's so sensible, because in the sun, where the sap is concentrated, is the only time that I've ever really had a problem with it, when I got it on my face. And so she was actually doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So just if you've got Euphorbia wolfenii or Caraccas varieties, do deadhead them soon, because they're going brown and they don't look so nice perhaps. But pick your day. It doesn't have to be torrential rain, but pick a cool day, and ideally do it early in the morning, so that the sap is a bit diluted by the water the plants have absorbed overnight. So just be a bit careful.
Yeah, and when we say deadheading, we mean take the stem all the way down to the ground. Don't just take the heads off.
Yeah. Any others that we would add to that list of 5, Josie, do you think?
I've got Oreganum vulgare down here, the wild marjoram. We use that to edge our borders. And it just looks lovely. The florists pick it, don't they? When it's in. I mean, the florists use it more than the kitchen.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a great edging plant.
And I added Lychnis, actually.
Yes, yeah.
We've got 3 at the moment. Lychnis coronaris. We've got the classic magenta. We've got a white, and then we've got the most beautiful one, which is white with a pink eye, which so many people have commented on in the garden here. And I guess, again, it's a fluffy texture to the leaf, silver foliage. It really seems to do incredibly well and be really versatile and able to put up with a lot of different sort of weather situations, really.
Yes, yeah, they are really good. Though I did think in some areas of the garden they struggled over winter, didn't they?
Okay, so they die back.
Yeah,
right.
Yes,
not truly perennial.
Yeah, they some of them really did, but for a hot summer they're fantastic, and you can grow them from seed, can't you? And they'll flower really easily. Yeah. So that's an easy way to get a lot of those.
Any others that you can think of? I've got a couple more, I think.
Well, I mean, if people want to add grasses, I've put in our steeper gigantea.
Yes, so did I. Yeah. Good.
Which always looks great, doesn't it? Cut it back to a hedgehog. We have it as a hedgehog over winter. What I mean is we cut all the leaves down. They say don't cut down till spring, but steeper gigantea seems to put up with that.
Very good. And I think also the northern oak grass, that seems to be perfectly happy in sun or shade. And so Chasmanthium latifolium.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that because it's so good for late. Whereas, to be honest, I think our breezes are not as good with the fluctuating weather patterns, but certainly with drought. So the quaking grasses, sadly, which of course are meadow native plants, really don't seem to be seeding as much as they used to, I would say.
No, true. The old oxeye daisy is still doing well, though, isn't it? That'll put up with anything.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I was at Sissinghurst last night, and the White Garden, they've got really quite a lot of that.
Right.
And I respect that. You know, some people will think it's quite a common or garden plant, but if a plant does well, use
Yes.
it. And so, you know, I think that's exciting that they're using something sort of, you know, not grand in a way. And what do you think about roses, Josie? How do you feel they're faring?
Well, I mean, it seems to go against what I would be thinking. But this year is amazing for roses. And
Isn't it?
And I thought it was probably just our garden because of what the deer did to it last year. But, you know, driving round and seeing my neighbours' gardens, the roses are quite amazing. Perhaps they just like the milder, wet winters.
But also maybe the drenching of the rain almost that gets to their deepest roots, and then the sun, which ripens their flowers if it's not too hot. I mean, obviously they hated that intense heat where we had the heat wave 4 weeks ago, whenever it was.
Yeah.
But I think roses have been very good this year. And again, at Sissinghurst, they were looking unbelievably effusive and extraordinary in the White Garden and in the Rose Garden. Although, of course, they do get blown about, don't they? There's been high winds in recent weeks. And so then petals obviously drop more quickly and sort of, you know, they all become a bit more wayward and kind of blown about, don't they?
Yes, yeah. But, you know, perhaps the nation has taken to really good pruning habits. That's why we've got so many roses.
Very good, very good.
Perhaps a bit more tying down of stems if you've got very lax stems on your roses. Tie them as horizontal as possible to anything.
And my number 10, or perhaps between us, our number 10, of course, is our ever favourite salvias. I mean, we haven't even mentioned dahlias, and actually they could be okay, I think, but let's see. They're not out yet, so we can't judge them. But salvias have been in flower already for a good month, if not 6 weeks. They seem to have liked the wet winter because it was mild, so they've come back without us having to propagate them. You know, the classic peach Melba is just looking absolutely incredible, totally in flower already. And a lot of the microphyllars, the one from South America, Serapitozi, is in full flower, Jezebel's in full flower, Royal Bumble's in full flower. You know, a lot of them are looking absolutely splendid.
Yes, yeah.
So perhaps what not to grow or what to be a little wary of, and then we'll go back to our positive list as a roundup at the end.
Okay. So I was going to say, don't forget to plant ground cover plants, which helps in the dry and it helps in the wet. So what you're doing with ground cover, so low growing plants, you're smothering the weeds as well as keeping the ground cool in the heat of summer. And then equally in winter, it stops the soil washing away when we have these deluges. You know, that topsoil is so precious, anything to stop that. So bare soil, basically, no. You've got to have something covering your soil as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, good. So which are the plants that you would be a little anxious if I suddenly said, oh, Josie, let's do a da-de-da trial?
With regard to it being too wet for?
Yeah, or dry, you know.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to start off actually because we've always had a massive row here of 3 different phlox paniculata hybrids because I love that scent. And I came back or went out into the garden early one morning last summer and the entire row had gone. And I was like, no. But of course, it was Phlox David, which is meant to be mildew resistant. It was Phlox Blue Paradise, and it was another beautiful hybrid phlox that a friend of mine, Pip Morrison, had given me, which was a mauve. And they'd all been recited from the cutting garden because they kept getting mildew. So the whole lot, even though they're said to be really mildew-resistant varieties, unfortunately, were looking pretty bad last summer. So summer 20 25,
yeah.
and pretty bad the summer before, because we had these bouts of hot weeks and they just didn't like it, did they?
No. So they've gone into shady borders as much as possible. But we'd moved some in the autumn of 24 as well. And they, even in 25 in the shade, they just don't like it. They're much better than in the open borders. But yeah, not happy really.
Yeah. And you've also mentioned to me hellebores.
Yes. Yeah. I've just noticed that we can never get them quite as healthy as they were 5 or 6 years ago. They've got a lot of the black spot that they get, as soon as the flowers come out. I think because it's so wet as well, the flowers don't get a chance really. They go black very quickly. But I think with newer breeding,
exactly,
they'll get there. They'll get to a hellebore that'll put up with a lot of these this changing climate.
Yeah, like, is it called Ice and Roses Red?
Yes.
That one seems to be very healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that looked fabulous, didn't it? All winter we've been trialling it for 2 years.
And the Frost Kiss series that are named after lots of our famous gardeners. So like Penny Hobhouse, there's a Penny's Red, I think. Then Anna Pavord, or maybe it's an Anna's Red and a Penny's Pink.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And Pippa Greenwood, there's one called Pippa's Purple, I think.
Yeah.
And they've been bred about 10 years ago, 5 years ago, can't remember, but they seem to be really pretty good, and they don't get the nasty black fungal sort of rotting down into the heart of the plant.
Yeah.
So they seem really good.
Yes, yeah. The other shrub that we love so much here is a hydrangea, which will put up with those wet winters. They struggle a bit in the sun, don't they, in the summer when it's really hot, and we might have to water them. But that's another thing I was going to add in. If you've got something like a hydrangea, which is quite exposed to the sun, and you see its leaves starting to droop, then water it. But don't go out and sprinkle a bit with the hose pipe. It's the equivalent of 2 or 3 buckets of water on that shrub, and then leave it for a week. Don't every day. Don't go out and sprinkle it, because the roots will just come upwards to look for that water that you're sprinkling on, instead of you want them to go down as deep as possible.
That's such a good tip.
Yeah.
That's such a good tip.
And then I should add, mulch them. Once the soil is really wet, mulch with any organic matter that you've got.
Okay, so I'm going to sum up, because we've got 10 plants here. So 3 of them are Mediterranean. So we've got number 1, rosemary. I mean, we love the deep blue flowered one like Tuscan blue, but we also love prostratus. And I have loads of that here, which I use in my cooking all the time. So the rosemary family. Secondly, the teucrium family, brilliant in containers, very drought resistant, but really hardy and tough, and really able to put up with wet winters, apparently too, with good drainage. 3 of the euphorbias. I mean, we mentioned particularly the Crachias or Wolfenii varieties, but really I think a lot of the euphorbias are incredibly versatile plants. And then the second group, which gives us 4, 5, 6, and 7, are kind of seaside plants with perhaps the sort of felted silvery leaves being a sort of subsection of that. So for seaside, definitely the eryngiums. And then for the felted silvery leaves, which is sort of more Mediterranean, really, actually, you've got stachys and lychnis, which gives us 5 and 6. And then oreganum, again, for more Mediterranean. So that gives us 7. And then 8 would be the grasses, and Stipa gigantea seems to be doing really, really well here, and Casmanthium. 9 roses, and across the board here we've got very healthy roses, particularly if they're grown with salvias, and the microphylla ones are the really good varieties like Nachlinda. So rosemary 1, teucrium 2, euphorbias 3, eryngiums 4, stachys 5, oreganum 6, lychnis 7, grasses like Stipa 8, roses 9, and there's salvias number 10. What a nice list. You could have a garden with just those plants in and you'd be doing well, I'd say.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Josie.
Okie dokie.
Thanks very much for listening to Grow Cook Eat Arrange with me, Sarah Raven, and Josie Lewis. Next week, I'm joined by Richard Claxton, who is the leader, the CEO of the NGS, And the NGS, the Yellow Book Scheme, is something that feels dear to the heart of any British gardener. And we're going to hear about why it's there and what Richard is doing to kind of bring the whole concept of the Yellow Book up to date. So I'm sure it's going to be fascinating, and see you then. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.